Hello everyone, I'm Sanjay Vasu and I'm here for a video on Cambridge International Examination Secondary 1 Checkpoint Science Paper 1 Specimen Paper for examination from 2014. Let's start. Question 1. The giant panda lives in China. The diagram shows a simple food web involving the panda. A. Name one producer in the food web. That is a bamboo plant because that is one of the producers, which means one of the starting points of a food chain or food web. You can also write water plants because it's also another starting point. B. Name one primary consumer in the food web. But primary consumer means something which eats a producer, which is either water plants or bamboo plant. So let's take for water plants, that means primary consumer is snails. You can also write giant panda because that is the primary consumer of bamboo plants. C. Use the information in the food web to explain why the panda is described as an omnivore. We can see a giant panda eats fish, and that is an animal. So that means it can be a carnivore, right? Because it eats animals. But then, of course, it also eats bamboo plants. So it can be herbivore. But then it cannot be both a carnivore and a herbivore at the same time using those names. So there's another name for something which eats both animals and plants, which is omnivore. That's why it eats fish, which is an animal, and bamboo plant, which is, of course, a plant. D. What do the arrows in the food web show? It shows that, for example, water plants arrow to snails. That means energy is transferred from the water plants to the snails. Or in other words, the snails eats the water plants and gains energy from eating it. And you can write that for any of the arrows given. That's the answer. In general terms, you can get A arrow B is equal to energy transferred from A to B, instead of writing specifically what is A and what's B. That's the answer. Part E. Many of the bamboo forests in China are being cut down. This is causing the panda population to decrease. So just why? So we can see in the food web that giant pandas eat fish and bamboo plants. If bamboo plants are gone, or at least half gone, so only half of the total population before remains, that means there'll be less of the primary food which giant panda eats. And there will be fish. But then giant panda mainly eats bamboo plants. And if the supply of bamboo plants are cut down, or if the bamboo forests are cut down, the panda's main food will be reduced, and of course making them starve and die. That's why it can decrease the population. That's the answer. Question 2. This list shows properties that different materials can have. A. Magnetic. B. Can be compressed. C. Very high melting point. D. Very low melting point. E. Good conductor of heat. F is poor conductor of heat. G. Good conductor of electricity. H is non-conductor of electricity. Write down the letter of the property that answers each of these questions. A. Which two of the properties from the list make aluminium suitable for cooking pans? First of all, aluminium has a very high melting point, which means that when you cook something, you will have a really high temperature, but then it should not melt, right? Aluminium will not be able to melt in that temperatures. That's why aluminium is used. And also, it is a good conductor of heat, which is letter E. And why do we need it to be a good conductor of heat? Because only then the heat can be transferred from the power supply or the thermal energy supply to the food. It'll be transferred through the aluminium using conduction. That's the answer. B. Which property from the list explains why a lot of oxygen gas can be pumped into a very small container? So oxygen gas, or not just oxygen gas, any gas can be compressed, and that's why you can compress it into the small container. So letter B. C. Which property from the list explains why plastic makes a good material for the handle of a kettle? Well, we have a kettle, right? And kettles will be very hot because they'll have something like tea or coffee in them, right? For example. And these things need to be served extremely hot. But then if you have a good conductor of heat as the handle, that means The heat will be conducted from the tea or coffee inside to the handle itself through the kettle, and then it'll burn the fingers which are holding it. So we need to make sure that the material used for the handle is a poor conductor of heat. Only then it'll be safe for people to touch it. So it is option F. Why is plastic a good material? D. Which property from the list explains why rubber is used to cover electrical wiring? This is similar to the previous one. If you use something like copper to cover electrical wiring, it'll just conduct from the electrical wiring to copper because copper is a good conductor of electricity. And that means we could get an electric shock very easily. So using rubber, which is a non-conductor of electricity, helps us to not get electric shocks or to be more safe while handling this equipment or electrical wiring in this case. That's why we need non-conductor of electricity, H. That's the answer. Question 3. A student whistles 3 notes into a microphone connected to an oscilloscope. An oscilloscope shows the shape and size of a sound wave. A. The diagram shows the waves for whistle 1 and whistle 2, given over here. Use words from the list to complete these sentences. 1. The amplitude of whistle 1 is dash the amplitude of whistle 2. So amplitude means the height of the wave in the diagram. And amplitude of whistle 1 is clearly lesser compared to whistle 2. The amplitude of whistle 1 is this much, 1/2 over here, and whistle 2 it's 2.5, which is much higher. So less than. 2. The wavelength of whistle 1 is dash the wavelength of whistle 2. It is the same because we can see that one wavelength will be 2 units, and that's for whistle 1. For whistle 2 also it is 2 units, coming from one midpoint to the second midpoint after going through a full wave. That is 2 units for both waves, whistle 1 and 2. That's why it's same as. Let's go to part B. The diagram shows the waves for whistle 2, which is given before, and now whistle 3. Compare the loudness and pitch of whistle 2 and 3. So loudness means amplitude, and if the amplitude is higher, then loudness is higher. So loudness of whistle 2 is clearly greater than loudness of whistle 3. That's what I've written here. Now for pitch. Pitch means the wavelength of frequency. If the wavelength is lesser, the pitch is higher. So because the wavelength is higher over here and it's lower over here, that means the pitch is lower for whistle 2 and higher for whistle 3. So we can write the pitch of whistle 2 is less than whistle 3. That's the answer. Question 4. Use the key to identify this coral reef fish. Number 1, shape is very long and very thin. You go to 2. Shape is not long and thin. Go to 3. This shape is not that long and that thin, it's like a medium size. It's not too thin, it's this diameter. So we go to 3. Eyes on top of head, eyes on each side of head. Over here we can only see one eye, which means the other eye is on the other side. So eyes on each side of head, which means go to 5. Has stripes, does not have stripes. We can see that there's some white stripes over here, and then that means we can go to 6 because has stripes. Now has dark tips to fins and tail, or it does not have it, because we can see over here that it has some black color tips over here. So this is a clownfish. That's the answer. Question 5. The diagram shows the particle arrangement in a liquid. A. Draw the particle arrangement in a solid. This is simply many particles tightly packed together with very less spaces between them so they can only vibrate, like something like this pattern over here to fill the full box. B. Angelique puts 5 drops of a liquid perfume on the back of her hand. A few seconds later, Angelique can smell the perfume. This is because the perfume diffuses into her nose. Complete the sentence about diffusion, that's part 1. In diffusion, the perfume moves from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. 2. Explain, using the particle theory of matter, how diffusion takes place. We can see that when we spray the liquid perfume, the particles are quite close together because you spray it on a certain part of the hand, which is the back of the hand. and then it moves from being quite tightly packed, not a solid, but then still somewhat tightly packed, like this one, a fluid or liquid, and then it spreads out into another place, or into more less concentration place of the perfume. So it moves from a tighter packed area to a more spread out area. That's the answer. Question 6. Ahmed makes a prediction about the planets in the solar system. The time to orbit the sun increases the further away the planet is from the sun. That's prediction 1. To find evidence to support his prediction, he uses the internet. The table shows the information he finds. It's all over here. A. Does the information in the table support prediction 1? Well, the two variables in this prediction is the time to orbit the sun and then the planet distance from the sun, because it's written further away. So time to orbit the sun and distance. We can see that from Mercury to Mars, if we go down, the distance increases and the time to orbit the sun also increases. If the distance is higher, or if the planet is further away, the time to orbit the sun also increases, and that's why it's yes. Use information from the table to explain your answer. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, which has less time taken to orbit the sun than Venus, which is the next planet. The answer. B. Ahmed makes another prediction. The average surface temperature of a planet decreases the further away the planet is from the sun. 1. Does the information in the table support prediction 2? The answer is no, and why? So we can see the two variables are the average surface temperature of a planet and then the distance the planet is from the sun. So we can go over here, average surface temperature and distance from the sun. So Mercury temperature is 169 degrees and distance from the sun is 58 million kilometers. Well, now we go to 460 for Venus in degrees, and that's 108 million kilometers. Well, if we increase and increase, right, the distance increases, temperature increases. He said, or Ahmed said, that the average surface temperature decreases if the distance increases. So this already makes sure that his prediction is wrong. So Mercury is closer than Venus to the sun, but has lesser average surface temperature than the sun. TEMP is just temperature. That's the answer. Now go to part 2. Ahmed thinks he needs more evidence related to prediction 2, so just one extra piece of evidence he could use. Well, he has only taken 4 rows of the table, which are the first 4 planets. What about the other 4 planets? Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. What about these 4 planets, the outer planets, in other words? We need to use this evidence as well. This can help more for finding the answer. So we can go to part C. Ahmed correctly predicts he will weigh more on Earth than on Mars. Explain how the information in the table supports his prediction. Well, we can go back and see strength of gravity on the Earth is 9.8 newtons per kg, and on Mars it's 3.7 newtons per kg. The weight is equal to mass into gravitational pull or gravity force. Ahmed's weight on Earth, as A on Earth, that'll be equal to 9.8 multiplied by x, 9.8x. Now for Ahmed's weight on Mars, that'll be 3.7 into x. So 9.8 is greater than 3.7, right? So that means we can see that the information in the table supports his prediction. Gravity on Earth is higher than that on Mars. Let's go to question 7. Christina has 5 chickens. Here's some information about the chickens. Name of the chicken, sex of the chicken, and number of eggs per year are given. A. Christina wants to increase the number of eggs per year by using selective breeding. 1. Which 2 chickens should she breed together? The answer is cow and lamb, because of course you need to breed a male with a female, so you have to use lamb. And the one which produces the most number of eggs in the females, that is cow, right? And she wants to have the increase in number of eggs, so we have to use cow and lamb. 2. Christina chooses chickens to breed from the offspring. Which one should he choose? Of course, she needs to choose the ones that produce the most eggs, because we don't know what's the names or any statistics of the offspring chickens, right? so we can only write the ones that produce the most eggs. That's the answer. Part B. Other qualities can be used when selectively breeding chickens. Take the two qualities which are most useful. Size of eggs, yes, it's good because then you'll get more production from the eggs. Amount of milk produced, well, chickens don't produce milk, right? So that doesn't count. Low life expectancy, that's something which you don't want. Number of feathers, it's not really useful. Same for color of feathers. But resistance to disease means that it will produce good quality eggs, right? So that can also be ticked. So it's size of eggs and resistance to disease. That's the answer. Question 8. Rocks in the Earth's crust classified by the way that they are formed. Complete the sentences about rock formation. Choose words from the list. Each word can be used once, more than once, or not at all. Igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary. Dash rocks are formed when molten lava from a volcano cools down. That's igneous. Dash rocks are made from grains of rock that are cemented or stuck together. That's sedimentary. Dash rocks are made when heat and pressure change other types of rock. That's metamorphic rocks. They can be formed from any one of the other two types. D. Dash rocks are found in layers and often contain fossils. These are sedimentary rocks because, as the name suggests, they are sediments or layers. That's the answer. Question 9. The diagram shows part of an electromagnet. A. Write down the names of part A and part B on the diagram. So part A, which is this string-like thing, is actually a coil or wire tied around the core, which is part B. B. Write down the material used to make each part. Use words from the list. Part A material is, because we need to make this electrified or an electromagnet, we need some electric conductor to be in part A. That can be copper out of these 5. And part B, we need a metal so that it'll be able to use the electric energy and then convert it into magnetic force, which will make it an electromagnet. And the metal can be iron. That's the answer. Question 10. Poor diets can cause health problems. A. Draw a line between the diet and health problem. One has been done for you. Too much sugar. It'll become tooth decay, for example, cavities, right? Now for the second one, too much fat. That'll cause heart disease, as given here. Too much salt, high blood pressure, because more salt means more blood pressure. Too little protein means that less cells will be made and there's poor growth. Too little carbohydrate means little energy, because energy is produced by burning carbohydrates. B. Chen and Mike look at information about the amount of fat and fiber in different fruits. Number 1. Name the 2 fruits with highest amount of fiber. So the highest is pineapple with 13.8 grams, and second highest is banana with 3.1 grams. That's the answer. 2. Why is fiber important in diet? It helps in digestion of any material, it helps in stomach enzymes, and it helps to excrete waste efficiently. That's the answer. Part 3. Write one conclusion about the amount of fat found in fruits. We can go back and see in fat there's like extremely less amounts of fat, 0.1 or no grams of fat. So the amount of fat in fruits is very less or close to null or close to 0 actually. We can write like that as well. 4. Mike thinks the information in the table is not a fair comparison because the fruits are different shape. Lee thinks it's not a fair comparison, but he knows that the shape of the fruit is not important. What measurement do you need to make it a fair comparison? We need the mass of the fruit, because only then you'll know how much matter is there in the fruit, and then you will know number of particles of fiber or fat every, for example, 10 grams of fruit. That's the answer. Question 11. Safia investigates the reaction between magnesium ribbon and dilute sulfuric acid. In each experiment, Safia uses 25 centimeter cube of sulfuric acid. She records the temperature of the acid and then adds some magnesium ribbon, as shown in the diagram. When the magnesium is finished reacting, she records the temperature of the acid again. She does this 6 times. Each time she uses a different length of magnesium ribbon. Look at Safia's results. All are given here. Safia then calculates the temperature change for each reaction. A. Put her results, including temperature changes, into a table. So we need to first have length of magnesium, since that's the independent variable, right? So length of magnesium in centimeters. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as given here. Now the temperature before the reaction in degrees Celsius is over here. 20 and then for the first one, and then 21 for the next four, and 22 for the last one in degrees Celsius. Temperature after the reaction, we can write these values in the same order. Temperature change, we just do temperature after minus temperature before. 22 minus 20 is 2, 25 minus 21 is 4, 27 minus 21 is 6, and so on. 26 minus 21, 5, 31 minus 21, 10, 34 minus 22, 12. B. One set of readings is an anomalous result. Which set? It is the fourth set. 4 centimeters of magnesium started 21 degrees Celsius goes to 26 degrees Celsius. That's what Safi has written at least. And why? This is because we can see that the temperature change goes in an ascending value or directly proportional to the increase in length. Over here it increases, and then decreases, and then increases more in weight, and then it increases normally. Each time it should increase 2 degrees Celsius for this, but then for 6 to 5 and 5 to 10 it's not, so this value is anomalous and this full thing is anomalous. C. The reaction between magnesium and sulfuric acid releases energy. What's the name to this kind of reaction? Exothermic reaction, since it releases thermal energy. That's the answer. Question 12. Hassan does an experiment to find the maximum friction force between a wooden block and different surfaces. Here are his results. A. Name the apparatus Hassan uses to measure friction force. We can use spring balance or Newton meter. Newton meter is the more scientific term, but spring balance is also accepted. B. Hassan repeated the measurements for each surface 3 times. Explain why. Well, if we repeat 3 times and then we find the average, then we'll get a more accurate result, which means you can neglect anomalous readings. C. Calculate the average or the mean friction force for the gas experiment. As I said, they are calculating the average. So 9.3 plus 9.6 plus 10.2, because that is total friction force for the glass experiment over here, second row, and then divide by 3 because there are 3 values. So we get 29.1 by 3, 9.7 newtons. That's the answer. D. Circle the one anomalous reading in the table. All the values of the friction force should be very close to each other by maybe 1 unit or 2 units max. But then 24.5 and then 26.4 are quite close. But 32.6 is quite far away from the other two, which are these two, in number of values. So that's why we can say 32.6 or carpet test 2 is an anomalous reading. And if we're going to calculate the average for carpet, we need to only use test 1 and test 3 because this is anomalous. That's the answer. And with that, I come to the end of my paper. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, share this video with your friends and family, and comment on how you think this video was. With that, it's me, Math and Science with SV, signing out. Thank you. Bye.